Good morning and welcome to our today's SERVIEW Premium webinar. Our topic today is ITIL for the big picture. ITIL is now since 2 years on the market. We have the second anniversary of ITIL. We've got it in the February. So ITIL was launched in February 2019, and what we see is that there are still a lot of misunderstanding or not really deep understanding how the models and principles and new things in ITIL can help. And there are lots of questions. And so that's the reason why we have decided to bring this webinar online to give you a big picture, what's new in ITIL, what are the new models, and how do they connect and interact together. My name is Markus Bauser. I'm Managing Director for SERVIEW and responsible for our operational work, all of our consulting and training business. So yes, I have the honor to give you the influence. I have to apologize a little bit for my voice because I have a little view, but I hope that I can manage it the whole day, or the whole webinar. When you have any questions, you have the possibility to put it in the question area on the control panel of this session, and I will take a look to these questions and try to answer all of the questions into this webinar. But if there are too many questions or we cannot handle all the questions, then I will send you a personal email after the webinar, and then you will get the answer afterwards. The webinar will take around about 45 minutes, and the session is recorded. So when you want to see it again or to show it to a partner or a colleague, we say, hey, that's very cool. Here you have to look in. Then you can find the webinar, let me say today in the afternoon, in our YouTube channel. So I think that's all the housekeeping what we have to handle, and then we can start with the real content. What I said, my name is Markus Bauser. I'm working for SERVIEW since a long time now, since 2004, and yeah, my major topic in the last 25 years are service management and all the stuff around it. So I think I have a little bit to talk about and to share with you. Okay, that should be enough about me, and we should start with the content now. So now I have it. ITIL 4 is the last evolution of ITIL, and like I said, it was launched or published, the first publication in 2019. And yeah, the older version of ITIL V3 2011, that was the name of the last version, because the last review and the last update of ITIL V3 was in 2011, so a long time ago. And it's very important now that we get a new version, because the world have changed, not only since Corona. Corona have pushed a very hard change into the world of everybody from us. Everything is getting much faster. Everything is getting much more like VUCA world. I think you know this, and that you can see that the ways of working with ITIL, and ITIL provides you with an operational model, that the ways have changed, and we have to change the way we work, because we are too slow in the past to handle the problems and the advantages what we have right now. I see here a question. If you get the slides, yes, you can have these slides, and I have forgot to put it in the download area, so I will send it out after the webinar. I have all of your email addresses, and I will send you the slides after the webinar. Thank you for remembering. So now we have the latest version, and what ITIL 4 brings now, it provides us with a holistic way for IT professionals and for organizations. That are two perspectives what we have in ITIL for IT professionals and organizations around the world of co-creation, value, and a modern service economy. So what is a modern service economy? I've told you before, fast changing, things happening we are not expect before. We need a high velocity of changes. We have unexpected surroundings and so on. Additional all the mega trends what we see in the last years, high speed digitalization, the mix up of enterprise and IT service management, because enterprise is getting more and more IT because out of the digitalization of everything in the organizations. So the modern service economy have to change, and ITIL brings us now a framework which gives us a new way of providing services, a new way and new possibilities to interact with the consumer organizations, and gives us lots of possibilities to bring in new agile methods and new ideas of providing services to our customers. But also we will have, that will be see today also, we have lots of stuff. Let me say 60-70% of the older or the traditional ITIL, things like lots of processes, for example, which are still relevant. So not everything have changed, of course. Now and in the future, we have to handle incidents, we have to make changes, we have to handle problems, we have to handle requests, we have to make supports, we have to bring in new services, we have to have a service catalog, and so on. So that's not outdated, and the processes are still there. But I think we have to do all these stuff, but we have to do it in another way. And that's what we see in ITIL 3, gives us lots of best practices how we can handle this. One point where we can see that the change is very cool is in the definition of a service. When you take a look in the books, we have a definition of a service, and there we have some changes. And when you only read it, you can think, oh, there are only small changes in the wordings. But when you think about it, what's behind these new wording, it's a kind of revolution. The first thing, and I have highlighted this here in blue, a service means of co-creation value. So here we have highlighted one point which perhaps we know before, but it's now written down in the books, that only providing a service is not creating value. The value is created when the customer organizations uses these service, and through this usage of the service, we or the consumer organization creates the value for himself. So because he uses the service, he can ship out parts to his customers faster, to business activities more efficient, or something like that. Only providing a service is not creating value, and that's one major point here, what we see in ITIL, that, for example, methods like customer journey, touch points, and something is now included. So ITIL brings us with lots of more stuff to fill out and to create and to handle and to enhance the service relationship between the provider organization and the consumer organization. So service is the mean of co-creation value by facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve. Okay, without the customer have to manage specific costs and risks. So the major point is also to handle costs and risks. That's it. And with this picture here, for example, we see that the topic of value creation is getting a little bit more concrete. So, for example, when you use as customer or as consumer, when you use a service, you have also negative and positive effects. For example, when you're a customer of Netflix, you have to pay for it. That's the negative effect. The positive effect is that you get video on demand and the news, movies, and so on. And you have to decide if this negative effect that you have to pay for it and the positive effect that you can have it on demand wherever you want to have it, is more important for you than the money you have to pay for it. So we see here, and that's what these pictures should transport, is that you have positive effects, supported outcomes, costs which will remove, for example, risks you can remove when you use the service, but you also have negative effects, affected outcomes, costs introduced, what you have to pay for, and risks what you get because you get much more dependencies, for example, to suppliers. And you have to decide, are the positive effects more important than the negative effects for yourself, then you will create value out of the usage of the service. So what we see here is small changes in wording brings us a lot of more philosophy, a lot of more culture, a lot of more focus to the customer. And when we later take a look in the publications, then we see with publications like Drive Stakeholder Value, for example, is that we have a single publication which only focuses on how to enhance service relationship and how can we enhance the co-created value out of it. All organizations have resources. Now we take a look in how these models ITIL have implemented and how they the co-creation and how them embedded and how they work together. All organizations have resources that need to configure and create products that offer value to potential customers. So here we see the organizational resources of organizations like you have as service provider. You have money, you have budgets, you have people, you have technologies, you have buildings, and so on. And out of the combination and the usage of these organizational resources, you have the possibilities to create products. And when you give these products to your customers, they use it, then the co-creation of the value can start. These products can be goods, for example, you give a laptop or a computer or a monitor or a telephone to your customer. You give, for example, access to resources, like in the example with Netflix. With Netflix, you only buy the access to movies, or you give any kind of service. You can give these products individually to your customers or in any combinations of it. For example, you give a laptop and additional support and software support and trainings and access to project files and to cloud services and something like that. So what you have to see is, that's really new in ITIL 4, that we now have a clear definition of what a product is. And that brings us a very important step forward, for example, in cooperation with software development organizations. When you see or when you take the focus on things like DevOps. So because there are Scrum, for example, which is very famous as method for product development. It's products, and so for example, software development gives us software products. What we have to do now is to bring these together in a service catalog. So what we create now is, from these products, organizations create service offerings which are designed to address the needs of the customer or any customer segments. You can have different portfolios for service portfolios for different segments. And you take a look for the needs as, for example, quality or price. So when you bring together your products in services and you provide this to your customers, then you are a service provider. What I said, but alone to provide services does not create any value. You need a customer and you need to understand the customer demand. I have mentioned before that we now have in ITIL lots of methods, and we get lots of stuff out of agile areas to understand better the demand of the customers and map it much better to our service offerings. Things like personas, user story mapping, and so on. When we have the customers and our service offerings, and the service offerings fits very good to the demand, then the customer will start the usage of the service, and then we have an established service relationship. But the story does not end at the beginning of the relationship, because what we like to have is a long-time relationship, and we can get much more value out of the relationship, like we have realized in the beginning. So we have a common journey between the provider and the customer for co-creation, and that's the customer journey where we goes through together, learn together. The customers learn how to use our services in a better way, so that when they use it better, then they can create more value out of it, and we learn a lot of the demand and how the customers use our services, can change our services, can adopt them better to the demand, and so we have an ongoing development of the common capabilities to create value together. So we see a very, very hard and very strong focus on the co-creation. But what we also see in ITIL 4 is, and that's one thing what we have in the real world, of course, that's the reason why it's in here, is that we have multiple stakeholders for our services. For example, the provider, the consumer. Okay, we see it, but there are often lots of suppliers around it. There are potential regulators. Yesterday, I had a very cool session, an expert talk with a regulations company who gives us a perspective in the future how many regulations we will get, and there will be more regulations which we have to comply to. So or tax authorities, stakeholders, and so on. So the world is very complex, and when we provide our services in a way, and the customers uses it in a way that these demands of these stakeholders are also be solved, then we create added value. So we see that ITIL brings here a model which brings us much more details in how to create services, how to build them, how to bring them together in more agile and more end-to-end worlds, because what we see everywhere is that we have to break down the silos between operations and development, for example, and also other activities in the organizations like security or compliance. And so with these product definitions, we have much more good wording and good models to bring these points together. That's a very, very important step and development what I have done here. But does not end here. All our service portfolio or service delivery, the usage of the services are under influences and restrictions from the outside world. The best or the worst example is what we all see right now with the Corona crisis. And ITIL adopts here a model called PESTLE. And PESTLE, the single letters of PESTLE are the different possibilities of external influences we have to handle and we have to look for. For example, political factors, economical factors, social factors, technological factors, legal factors, or environmental factors. ITIL 4 provides a model to describe all the organizational resources and to bring this in a relationship to these external factors. So when we take the example of the Corona crisis, that's of course environmental. We get this pandemic, this virus. Sorry, we get this virus, and yeah, this changes the way how we can provide our service and how the service can be used. For example, we have much more home working right now. We have much more remote working because the employees cannot go to the offices. We get shutdowns in different areas worldwide. And why do we get the shutdowns? Because the political situation has changed. We are getting rules and decisions of the governments that shutdowns have to be decided. So the political factors changes. The pandemic have an influence to the economical surroundings. The way of working is changed completely. What we hear is the wording, the new normal. What will be the new normal in the future? How will we work look like? It will completely change. So other technologies getting in focus, for example, security issues, VPNs, cloud computing, remote computing, edge computing, and so on. So technical factors changes, and of course, legal factors changes. And here we see what can happen from outside. One issue happened. Nobody have estimated it before. It changes the rules worldwide in a second. And that's a situation we have to handle in our service management. And the old operations models like we see it in ITIL v3 cannot handle a world like we have right now. That's the way we have to change. That's the way, because we have to build up an organization that is much more agile, that is much more flexible, not so bureaucratic, and is able to handle changes in shorter time frames. So we have here the model, the pestle model, who helps us to take a look in the external influences and restrictions and bring this in a relationship to the 4 dimensions of service management. Because when you want to deliver services, you always have 4 dimensions you have to take a look and you have to be account. One is organization and people. The second is value streams and processes. The third is partners and suppliers. And the fourth is information and technologies. Nothing of it exists in isolation. They overlap and they interact each other. When you change, for example, one process in your organizations, you have an impact to the organization itself, because you have to change roles, you have to change accountabilities, you have to change activities, you have to change tasks. You have an impact of the people, because normally people do not like changes. You have to educate them in how they should work together in the future in another way. So the change of the one dimension process has an influence to the dimension organization and people. Normally, when you changes, you should try to automate it. So you have an impact to technologies, to your tools, to your supporting instruments. And normally you not work alone. When you change, for example, change process, and you have outsourced your operations to an external supplier, then you have external suppliers and partners within. So that's very important that we take always a holistic approach when we take a look in how we change our or how do we adapt our service management. And ITIL brings us these 4 dimensions now. And everything what you find in the ITIL books is in ITIL 4 have a relation and connections to these 4 dimensions. For example, we have a lot of practices now that mostly there are lots of what's in the former version was the processes. But what's new is that we have for each practice an own online document. The practices are not part of the core books right now because the practices are changing too fast. So that the Excelos, the publisher of ITIL, is looking for a much more flexible way to assure this ITIL is always up to date. And so they decided to take out the practices out of the books. And so they bring in these online documents. But what you find in these documents is, of course, what are the purpose, how is it built up, what are the major activities, and so on. What we also have found in the older versions of ITIL. But what we now find is the connection always and the relation to these 4 dimensions. What's important for this practice out of the perspective of these 4 dimensions? That's what we have for all of these. Something like the 4 dimensions we had in ITIL v3 in the service design. There are the 4 P's of service design: people, products, processes, partners. And ITIL 3 says here you have to take a look on these 4 dimensions when you design a process. But in the later books, later phases of ITIL 3 lifecycle, service transition or operation or CSI, this model was not founded anymore. So here we have a very more consequent usage of this model in all the books, in all the publications, in all the practice. We find these. So when we produce our services, we bring our products and service to the customers, they use it, then we create value. We have to take a look on these 4 dimensions, and we have the influence of these external factors, which we see in the PASTEL model. So when we get back to our big picture, we see it now. We have opportunities and demands. When you provide a service where nobody have a demand for it, then nobody will use it, and then you will not create any value. So the minimum what you need is the opportunity that someone will use it. And you see our organizational resources are influenced and have restrictions out of PASTEL and the 4 dimensions. So now we see how the models are played together. Now we take a look how we provide these elements, what is ITIL to bring in as model to manage these products, to manage these services, and at the end of the day to enhance the service relationship. So what we have is the service value system as one major model in ITIL 4. We can say that the ITIL life cycle, ITIL v3 life cycle with strategy, design, transition, and so on, is a little bit of outdated because it's more waterfall and not flexible enough. And ITIL have bring in these service value system as model. The organization can leverage the service value system model, or SVS, when you take a little bit shorter, that describes the various organizational components of a service provider and how they play together. Take a look a little bit closer to it. At the beginning, we said we have a demand or an opportunity for service, and at the end, we have to create values. What we have is as components, as at the top level, guiding principles. That's something when you have a little bit of experience in the agile world or in the agile ways of working, the agile manifesto or something like that. ITIL provides here guiding principles which should guide us in every activity what we are doing in ITIL, to assure that we focus on value, that we keep it simple and practical, and so on. Then, of course, we have governance. You need to steer, to control your organizations. You have to build up regulations that ensures that your vision, your goals has breakdown to your management levels, and it's very important. There's ITIL there, very good fitting to COBIT, for example, which is the most famous framework for governance, that governance and management have to be separated. So we have governance, we have the service value chain. That's the activities what we are doing to provide our services. We have the practices. Here we find what we have former seen in processes and more. So practices are more the organizational capabilities, what we need to produce our service value chain and to produce out of the task of the service value chain the values. And we have the idea of continual improvement. This idea is not really new. In the older versions of ITIL, we have a continuous service improvement with the philosophy of the Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act. Here are a little bit more what we see in the agile world with continuous reviews and retrospectives. But when you're doing the plan to check act circles very fast and very often and organize it in sprints, then you have the same. When we take a look in the middle of this model, the value chain activities, which is a loosey connection of value chain activities which convert customer demand into valuable products and services. Practices, like I said, support and contribute to value chain activities. So when we have a demand, then we have to engage with the customers, all the communications out with stakeholders outside. Perhaps we have to obtain and build things to create a service or deliver the service. We have to design it, we have to transition, we have to deliver and support our services, and then we produce products and services, and at the end of the day we create value out of it. So when we take a look in our bigger picture, you see the service value system as, let me say, the driving framework of ITIL, which replaces the service life cycle, and in the middle of this we have the service value chain. You see it here in the bottom of the picture. What we said, practices are an evolution of the ITIL 3 version 3 processes and are structured using the 4 dimensions model, but I think I've said it before. Here are the practices as fundament for the value chain activities. A sequence of value chain activities are designed in value streams. So that's what we are doing in our day-by-day work. We are doing value streams. And take a look a little bit closer on it. For example, that is an example for a value stream. For example, the bank has a value stream that maps the activities needed to design, to develop, and release a new app functionality. Or another value stream can be the activities need support user complaints. User complaint, then you have engaged with a service desk, for example. You have to deliver and support activities because perhaps you see that the complaint is correct and you have to change something in his hardware configuration or software configuration to solve this complaint, to solve this issue. Perhaps you have to buy something or to build something, a patch or a new hardware component. Then you have to bring it on the laptop. Then you have to have support activities again, and then you have recreated the value activities. So what we are doing is that we are more thinking in value streams than in practices or in processes. And that was one point what not works really good in the past in ITIL v3 world. We have a lot of practices. We have a lot of processes like incident, problem change, config, classical support processes. And what the organizations have done is they've implemented these processes as silos. And then you have, for example, something like an onboarding process. A new new employee comes into the organization, what you have to do then is you have activities out of the request fulfillment, you have to do activities out of change management, you have activities in the configuration management, you have activities in release and deployment management, and there was no instrument in ITIL v3 to connect all these activities together. And we have lots of waste in time and and in efficiency, that the processes are not really good connected together. And now we have these value streams, and we are guided to think more on value streams, and then in the second step think how have our practices be built up to support these value streams very good and very efficient. That's a little bit the difference. It does not mean that the old processes like instant problem change, config, you name it, are not longer there. And so it's more an additional model to bring more, let me say, a better flow in your organization. And that's what we need. Each value stream may include different activities, I said it, but each one starts with the opportunity or demand and ends with value delivered from products and services. Techniques like value stream mapping can help to optimize the value stream before the organization considers automating repeatable tasks. So that's what we see right now, is that we need to build up very efficient value streams, and we need to build it up in a way that we can have a high level of automation, because that brings us the speed what we need today, and the enhanced of the service quality. Yes, at the end of the end, and we need opportunity at the beginning, opportunity at the end, product and service. So when we go back to our picture, we see now we have the values chains which we have designed. These value chains helps us to manage our products. It helps us to manage our services, and it helps to enhance the service relation. That are the major models of ITIL, and that is the idea behind it, how ITIL thinks to get much better service organizations, to enhance the service relationship, to bring more customer focus in all our service management organizations. In order to design and to run a new value stream, the organization should consider these key concepts of ITIL 4, of course. And by adopting these key concepts together, that's very important. To adopting these together, organizations can create a flexible and active architecture that delivers world-class IT-enabled services. That's the IT idea behind these models. We like this picture very much, because when you read the books, then this picture is not part of the ITIL books, and that was let me say, a negative point in what we have in ITIL, since I know it since the 90s, that the big pictures are missing a little bit. So it gives you a complete understanding how the models have to connect it together. If you like to, you can have this picture as a poster. We have it in our SERVIEW shop. You can download it for free there. When you go to the address www.serview.shop, then you see here the poster what we've seen before, and also what we have put it in is the list of the practices what ITIL is providing now, sorted in 3 categories: technical practices, general practices, and service management practices, and also the guiding principles what we have in the service value system. So when you like to download it, feel free to go to our shop and download the poster there. When you make a little bit conclusion, what's in an ITIL 4? What we have is we have a change in extensions of the service taxonomy, and we have various new models, 9 principles. We have service value system. we have extensive practices, and so on. We have seen how they is better connected together. We have clear references to modern terms and technologies like DevOps, Agile, lean management, software development, and so on. And I have a lot of discussions right now. I've had a telephone call 2 days ago with a managing director of a very big operational part or IT department of a car manufacturer. And yes, exactly these problem that you described, how to bring these practices together, how to bring software development together with service management, how the roads should look like, how the products should look like, how they can build out of the products, the service offerings, and so on. And now we have an ITIL 4 answers for that. So that's very, very important, very good step. But also when you are on a perhaps not so high maturity level, when you said, yes, okay, I'm not a big auto manufacturer, I'm not Google or something like that, and I have to reorganize my change or my support processes like instant problem change, you also find these answers in ITIL 4 that they are not gone. You find it in the practices. So the only tip is not only to buy the books, to make your access to the practices, you can get it in our trainings, or when you create an access point on the Excelos website. The service lifecycle is replaced as a regulatory framework by the service value chain. We have seen it. And we have a very strong focus on feedback loops and transparency in the service provider ecosystems. Very strong focus to have the very early access to our customers, to really manage the customer journey, to manage these touch points with our consumers, users, and other stakeholders, to assure that they got what they need out of the services so that they can create the value out of it. We have value chain and practices. The practices represent the necessary skills and capabilities. And what we have is the entire service value chain is controlled and monitored by governance. And that's what's very cool, is that ITIL is not inventing here something new. We have very strong connections to established frameworks like COVID 2019, which fits very, very good together. So not only when you take in communication with your software development colleagues or with your security colleagues, also with the colleagues of the IT governance and compliance, ITIL is now nearby the wordings, what they know from COVID, for example. So the communication and the adoption is much more easier right now. Sorry. And what I said, all useful elements from ITIL v3 are taken over. Around about 60-70% of the old books is already in the new books or in the practices. Before I take a look on the qualification scheme, perhaps you said, okay, I now want to jump into the ITIL 4 world and to enhance my qualifications. I take a fast look in the questions, if there are any questions which I can answer right now. No, there was only the question with the handouts, but I said I will send it to you afterwards via email. The qualification scheme, what you see here now is changed a little bit from the ITIL v3 qualification scheme, because the way they publish the books has also changed. What we have now is a really ITIL Foundation publication. In the past, it was we have 5 publications, 1 publication for each lifecycle phase, and the first 2 chapters of the publication always has the same content, because the philosophy in ITIL v3 was that every book can stand for them alone, and so the first 2 chapters are always the same. It describes the key concepts. and definitions. What is service? What is service management? What's customer? What is user? What is value creation, utility and warranty, and so on. And now they have changed this philosophy. They have said, okay, we publish an ITIL foundation book where we find all the key concepts and the basics and the fundament for IT service management. That's the ITIL foundation. That's nearby the content for the ITIL foundation course and exam. And then we have two streams, ITIL Managing Professional and ITIL Strategic Leader. In the past, we had also two streams in ITIL V3, but that was not very successful because we have a lot of overlapping content in both streams. Perhaps you remember we have the life cycles in focused on the life cycle stream, one course, one for strategy, design, transition, operations, CSI, and then managing across the life cycle. And on the other side, we have more focus on, let me say, activities like offering and agreements or support or design. And we have a lot of overlapping, and so the customers and the users of ITIL says, well, which part, which stream should look like, and how the differences are between the trainings. And so it was not very clever. So what they have changed now is that each book take a look on ITIL out of a different perspective. And you have a book called Create, Deliver, and Support, and also a course for it. And that's, let me say, that's the fundamental activities of an IT organizations, the day-by-day IT work. How do I create services? How do I deliver it and transfer and make the transition into the operations? How do I do my day-by-day work in the support? Here we have a lot of focus on value chain activities, value streams, and so on. Then we have the focus on how can we assure that our customers are really happy with our services. That's the drive stakeholder value. Here's the major model, the value chain, not the value chain, sorry, the customer journey. Then we have direct plan and improve. That's the governance and the perspective of creating the strategy and bring it into the real world, and also a very strong focus on organizational change management. So which factors of the changes for people, all the people stuff, have you take a look for. And we have high velocity IT. Not everybody is affected from it, but it's getting more and more. How should you build up all these ITIL and service management stuff when you are in high speed environments, when you have changes every day, every hour, and you have to be fast and reliable in the same time frame? So how can you build these up? High velocity IT. So we see more 4 perspectives. What I said, beside every practice has its own document we can access via Excel's web page. When you have the foundation and have successfully passed these four courses and exams, then you automatically get the designation and title ITIL Managing Professional. But the guys of Excel said, no, we need another perspective, more let me say, the business perspective, more the strategy perspective. How can I use ITIL to support digital strategy and digitalization? And that's the ITIL Strategic Leader and the book Digital and IT Strategy. That's the top level perspective on this framework. How can I connect my service strategy with a digital strategy with a business strategy? And they said, okay, when someone wants to be a strategic leader, then they don't have to take in the deep knowledge how ITIL works in every area, but the minimum what they need to have is the perspective of the governance. And so that's the reason why you find these courses in 2 time series, that you said if you want to have this designation or these designations, you need to have the DPI direct plan and improve course. When you are an ITIL management professional and you already have the DPI, then you don't have to do it twice. Then only you have to do these course, and then you have the second designation, the second title. If you are already in your ITIL V3 world, so let me say you are for example, an ITIL V3 expert, or you have collected the minimum of 17 credits, then you have a very cool opportunity to bypass all these with the transition, ITIL management professional transition training and exam. That's only one training, 5 days, where you only take a look and the changes from V3 to ITIL 4 out of these four perspectives. Why 5 days? One day all the major models what have changed, and then one day for each perspective. But you only have 5 days training, you only have one exam, and then you are ITIL managing professional. You should do it in the next, let me say, 12 months, because Excelos has said that this way will be cancelled, I think, at the end of the next year. So if you are ITIL expert, then that's a very cool opportunity, a very cool course, and very efficient. But you should do it in the next time. And then when you have these management professional, for example, on the way with the transition training, then you only don't have to do the DPI course, you only have to do the digital IT strategy, and then you can also have the strategic leader. I think when you are you should take a look for both perspectives, because one problem what we had in the past with the adoption of ITIL in the real world is that we get too many ITIL nerds. Too many people are running out in the real world and say we have to do it like this because it stands in the books, and book knowledge is not a quality criteria. We need much more the perspective of the business and the customers. And so of course you need to be an ITIL expert, and then that's this area here. But you also should take a look in the strategy perspective. That's for me, that's the next evolution step of your personal journey. So when I bring these in another picture and said, what could be your journey? It should build up the basic knowledge. Then you have the possibility to be an ITIL managing professional, and then on the top level, the next step in your evolution is to take in the strategic perspective, and then you have the ITIL leader digital IT strategy, or you are still an ITIL expert, ITIL V3 expert, or have 70 points in the qualification scheme. Then you only have to do the transition and then the leader course. So slightly different picture, but for me it helps because it shows you a little bit of journey. Yes, so I've said 45 minutes now, it's 53 minutes, so it takes a little bit longer. I hope it helps you a little bit to understand what ITIL now what ITIL have done for evolution. And it's more an evolution, it's not a revolution, but because all what is useful out of the old ITIL V3 world we still find in ITIL 4. And you have a very big picture, you can do it very strategic, you can use it when you are on a high level, high maturity level and thinking about DevOps and something like that. You also find the basic stuff in it when you said, I'm 2 or 3 or 5 steps before I have to clean up my own floors, I have to do a re-engineering of instant problem change. Then you also find it in the books and into the practices. So I take a fast look in the questions, if there are any questions. Yeah, here is one question. Can I find a recording of this webinar in English? Yes, of course you can, and I have it here as picture. One moment. Here is it. We will We have a SERVIEW YouTube channel. You find it in YouTube when you look for SERVIEW or SERVIEW TV. And in this YouTube channel, you find an own playlist for English content. So what you see here is we have some knowledge nuggets that are videos which are around about 3, 4, 5 minutes, where we explain short nuggets, short parts of ITIL and prints and so on. And we have these kind of webinars here, which are taken between 45 and 60 minutes. For example, you see the last one, what we have done in English was design thinking for ITIL, also very interesting. To take a look at how can we prototyping ITIL products and processes, and to speed up this number very, very fast. You only, when you go to this YouTube channel, you only have to look for the knowledge in English area. There are all the English stuff, and also you find a lot of stuff in German if you like to. If you want to take a look for future webinars in English, you find it on the SERVIEW DE site. Of course, there are all our webinars. When you only want to see the English ones, then you please go to the our English training site, itilbyserview.com. You see it here, and then resources and webinars. There you find the English webinars which we have planned, and the next one is in around about 4 weeks. We have a webinar to the topic OKRs, objectives and key results. Very hot topic, which is we have a lot of interest right now. We have it as new training. Starts I think next Monday is the first one, and we also have it in English. And that's a new way. It's a new way to create and to control and to steer an organization over objectives and key results. It's not really new because it was invented in the 70s by Intel, but now with all the agile thinking and agile stuff, it's getting very, very famous right now. And if you want to take a look in what's it and how is it something which is interesting for you, and for what can you use it? We have it at the 16th of April at 11 o'clock from my colleague Andrea Kremer, and she gives you an introduction of what is OKR. So now I have it. Great. Thank you very much for listening to this webinar. I hope it was helpful for you. If you have any questions afterwards, you can connect me directly. You see my email address here, markus.bause@serview.de, or you find me on LinkedIn or Xing. So you can connect me there and come in with any questions. If you are thinking about your trainings in the future, and it's not clear which training is fitting for you, please call us. It's very stupid to realize in the training that you have chosen the wrong one, and it's not so easy to find the correct training, especially when you perhaps have done some stuff in ITIL v3. Now you want to switch to ITIL 4. What's the best way to do it and very efficient? Call us, use our chat possibilities and all our contact modules, and we help you. We are very happy to support you to find the correct way of training. So at the end of the day, I have to say thank you very much. Stay healthy. That's the most important thing right now. And hopefully we will see us in our future events and webinars and trainings, and I will be very happy to see you there. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Take care and goodbye.